Klang Valley, a city of 4 million people. Half of them are working population. According to Prasarana's official statistics, more than 700,000 people take the rapid rail to commute within the city each day. Each day! What if the government decided to list the LRT and MRT in the market? Wouldn't that give investors a nice and steady dividend income stream over the long term? Hi, I'm Frankie. Welcome back to my Fuck Show. In March 2022, the Prime Minister confirmed that the MRT3 Circle Line is a go after the project was previously suspended during the PH regime. This is good news for residents in the Klang Valley. But is it just me or something is not right about the project? I mean, if it is supposed to ease the horrendous KL traffic and build a sustainable recurring income to the shareholders of the operators, which is currently the government, why do I still get stuck in the traffic? And why is the country still not rich from collecting all the dividends generated by train rides? Let's dive deep down to the core of it and see what would it look like if RT and MRT lines were to be listed on Bursa Malaysia. To understand how business is being run, first, we need to get to know the owner of the company. In this case, it's the government of Malaysia. Okay. You know already this is not going to turn out well, but nonetheless, it is important to understand what went wrong so that if the government decided to privatize the company, we know exactly what to look out in the prospectus. As policymakers of the country, the government's main objective is to ensure the welfare of the citizens. This year alone, under Budget 2022, the government has allocated more than 31 billion ringgit for various subsidies, incentives and assistance to alleviate the cost of living in Malaysia due to the hyperinflation that is happening globally. That amount did not take into account the skyrocket oil and gas prices today, which already topped more than $100 per barrel. And according to the first Deputy Finance Minister Muhammad Shahar bin Abdullah,
jumlah subsidi petrol produk petroleum bagi keseluruhan tahun 2022 dijangka mencecah sehingga 28 bilion ringgit. Sekiranya harga minyak mentah dunia kekal melebihi $100 setong.
28 billion ringgit, my friend. Compared to the total targeted subsidies of 31 billion, where to find the money way? Since Najib's administration, the Klang Valley MRT project has spent over 52 billion ringgit in the past, not to mention the 16.6 billion being spent on LRT3 and the recent go-ahead on the MRT3, which is expected to cost another 30 to 50 billion ringgit in the next 10 years. Construction companies like Gamoda and Sunway Construction, they love such announcement from the government, by the way, especially after 2 years of the financial drought due to the pandemic. While the government initiative to build better public infrastructure is good for the people, I can't help but to ask myself, do they really know what they are doing di dalam Dewan? Do the people really cheer when a new line is proposed and built? Why are the people not giving the politician the reaction that they want? For me, MRT or no MRT don't really matter. First of all, thanks to the government fuel subsidy, driving is still considered one of the most efficient and cheapest way to travel, especially when there's more than one person traveling together. Secondly, the last mile connectivity between the stations to my final destinations are often not very convenient, which ends up losing more time traveling and losing productivity. Now, using myself as an example, the government is taking my money through tax collection to build public transportation and then giving me a subsidy to pump petrol for my car to travel. What does it actually want to do? Take the train or to drive? Confusing lah. If the intention of MRT is to lower carbon emission, it is not working as well because the government is encouraging people to drive when it decides to give fuel subsidies. So it means that the government does not have a clear purpose for public transportation in the country. This affects the role of the MRT that we have spent so much time, effort and money building over the years. Therefore, the government is building it for the sake of building such a system rather than addressing the broader issues. In the National Public Transport Master Plan, the government was aiming to change 40% of the people's preference to use public transportation in the cities by 2030. And for the Klang Valley area, that target was 40% by 2020, 10 years earlier than other parts of the country. Clearly, that target was not met. Even before the pandemic, only 21% of the people commuted using public transport according to sources. Piecing whatever I have said just now into a scenario if LRT and MRT were to be listed on Bursa Malaysia, number one, the way in which the government decided to spend more than 100 billion ringgit on MRT lines in the Klang Valley is questionable because the politicians themselves don't exactly know why they built the train system. Number two, if the government's main objective is to encourage people to take public transportation, then giving fuel subsidy is a slap in its own face. It is showing investors that it spends money on building the MRT system, but at the same time giving money for the people to drive instead. Based on that, you may assume that it will be a loss-making company. Actually, no need to assume. I have the numbers. Prasarana Malaysia Berhad, the operator of the urban rail and bus system, had retained losses of 46.9 billion ringgit as at FY 2020. The balance sheet is what you would expect as well. The long-term liability is standing strong at 35 billion ringgit, backed by a short-term assets of only 6.7 billion in the same period of time. Really a bunch of jokers. Luckily, the group is not listed as a public company. If not, the world is going to think that Malaysians are generally business also don't know how to run. Having said that, the construction sector has no complaints at all. Keep the contracts coming, man. According to MRT Corp CEO Dr. Muhammad Zarif Hashim, the MRT3 circle line is 51 km in length, split between 40 km of elevated tracks and 11 km of underground tunnels. The current proposed alignment will have 31 stations, with 10 of them serving as interchange stations with the 8 existing rail lines in the Klang Valley. In another statement, Transport Minister Wee Ka Siong said that the tender for MRT3 Circle Line, which consists of 5 packages, will be opened in May this year, while the jobs will be awarded in the 4th quarter of 2022. To give you some hints on the potential winners of the tender, the 5 main packages are for 2 turnkey contractors for elevated works, 1 turnkey contractor for underground works, 1 for integrated rail system, and 1 project management consultant work alongside with MRT Corp as the project developer. If you invested in the construction companies that benefited from the previous MRT contracts before, chances are the same names are going to be strong contenders in the upcoming tender for the MRT3 project. Just refer back to MRT 1 and 2 awarded contracts and you will know what I mean. Typically, construction contracts have razor-thin margin due to the fact that the dirty job is often subcontracted to a dozen middlemen before it reaches the company that actually goes down to the ground to do the job. Because of that, there isn't much to shout about in terms of profitability of a construction company. It is more exciting to speculate and predict which company will get the job instead. As such, construction is a sector that often tends to buy on rumor and sell on fact before investors get stuck with a stock that produces very little profit. That's all we have for today. #FUCK.